Hey all, this is an honors only, advanced only notes, but these notes I love because these notes actually help us apply something we learned way back in Algebra 1 to help us solve something now in a Geometry Advanced class. It's using completing the square to write equations of circles. Now I'm going to go backwards with you a little bit, and I want to remind you of a few things that you've been able to use in your past. And I'm going to show you how things are derived, okay? So first of all, I need you to go back to using the quadratic formula. Remember, the quadratic formula was used to solve any equation with that's a quadratic. So here we have, I don't know why I always do one y straight, one y curved, but we'll go with it. And remember, we have to pick out A, B, and C when we do this because the quadratic formula is based off of this equation. And I just have y's here instead of x, but I treat it the same way. And so what is my A? My A is 1, my B is a -6, and my C is a +2. And we put it in our quadratic equation, and this is the one you sing. X equals a -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So hopefully you had memorized this way back in Algebra 1. It was a way to solve quadratics. So I just take the information and I plug it in. So I get a negative, opposite, a -6, so that would be a +6, plus or minus, what do we have? A -6 squared minus 4 times A, which is 1, times C, which is 2, all over 2 times 1. Now, don't let it get confused. You just make sure you do your order of operation. So I get 6 plus or minus 36 minus 8 all over 2. So that's going to be the 24, right? No, wait, 28. Excuse me, I can't do my math. That's going to be 28 all over 2. And I have to simplify radicals just like normal. So I get 6 plus or minus 2 root 7 all over 2. Now, one thing about radicals is you can simplify if you can divide further, if you can divide 2 into both the first and second term, and I can. So my final answer is really, make sure I pull my x's down here, x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. Now, that's just using the quadratic formula. And actually, I should put a y here because those were y's, right, guys? Change that all to a y here. Just we're on the same one because we had a y in our original equation, and that's not too bad. Well, now, instead, we're going to use how the actual quadratic formula was derived. It's called completing the square. And you all had to do it. You might not remember it, but you all had to do it. It's actually pretty simple. So I'm going to go back to my original equation here. I'm going to go y squared minus 6y plus 2 is equal to 0. And I'm going to show you the step-by-step process of using it to complete the square. First thing you're going to do, if you're going to use completing the square, you move your constant term to the other side. So I go y squared minus 6y, and I'm going to go plus blank equals a -2 plus blank. Notice I move this to the other side. The reason why I have a blank here is because if I add to one side of the equation, I have to do it to the other side. So here's what you do. You take your middle term here, your -6, and you divide it by 2. So I go -6 divided by 2, which gives me what? A -3. Now this is where you're completing the square. So then what I want you to do is to square -3 and put it in the blank. So that's 9. But to not change the value of my equation, if I add 9 to the left, I have to add 9 where? To the right. So now, looking at that, I get y squared minus 6y plus 9 is equal to 7. Now, we're using the idea of perfect square trinomials. Now, I need you guys to go back to remember what a perfect square trinomial is. A perfect square trinomial is formed by squaring a binomial. So like here, I'd get an x squared plus 4x plus 4. Notice the perfect square. Okay, 4 here, x squared here. Well, I wrote now to have a perfect square. Now, how do I know which one it is? Well, you look at this term right here. And I can rewrite that trinomial as a binomial being squared. Well, what was it that I was going to use? My -3, because that's what was being squared, equals 7. Now, this is the goal we're trying to get to, this one right here. But let's go ahead and finish it up. So if I was to solve this, and I got y minus 3 squared is equal to 7, how would I get y by itself? first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the square root of both sides. So I get y minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. Right? Because if I take the square of both sides, we can't forget our plus or minus. And then what am I going to do with the 3? Y equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. Now notice I got the same equation and answer as up above. But what's confusing about it is learning how to complete the square. So I'm going to actually give you another one to try. Okay? So let's try another one that's not quite so bad. How about if I had something like this? X squared, let's go plus 8x plus 5 is equal to 0. So when I'm working on this, first thing you're going to do is we're going to go ahead and move our constant to the other side. So I go x squared plus 8x equals a negative 5. Okay? Then I'm going to go, all right, I know for completing the square I'm going to have to add something to both sides. Well, what do I do? Remember, you take 8, divide it by 2. Remember, 8 divided by 2. Oh, that's 4. Well, now that's what you're going to square. What's 4 squared? 16. 16. So now I get x squared plus 8x plus 16 is equal to 11. Now, this is a perfect square trinomial. It is actually, because this is addition sign, I know both values have to be positive. When I look here, and what value is that? Well, the one I divided by 2 with. I picked it strategically so I could use it. So now I get the quantity x plus 4 squared equals 11. Now, notice, doesn't that look kind of familiar to what we did yesterday when we were writing equations of circles? Because remember, what's an equation of a circle? The equation of a circle, make sure we're still seeing this here, is remember x minus h squared plus the quantity y minus k squared equals the radius squared. So we're going to use this to actually write one. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. We're going to write an equation of a circle. The directions will be like this. Use completing the square to find the equation of a circle. Okay? And I know I'm going a long time on this, so I probably should at least do one more and then stop and then give the final example. So here's the example I want you to use. Here's your equation. X squared minus 4x plus y squared plus 4y plus 6 is equal to 0. Now, here's the cool thing for this first example. Everything is on the left. I don't have to worry about coefficients from x squared and y squared, but here's the one thing I need you to do. I need you to make sure that you still move your constant term over. So the very next thing you're going to do is you're going to go negative 6 on the other side. But now I'm going to make sure I'm actually going to do completing the square twice. Okay? I'm going to have x squared minus 4x plus blank, all right, plus y squared plus 4y plus blank. So I'm going to have to do it twice on each side. So basically I'm doing the completing the square twice for an equation of a circle. So now let's go ahead and figure out what we do next. So now I go to the 4 and I divide it by 2. What's a negative 4 divided by 2? That's a negative 2. Square it. What's a negative 2 squared? 4. So if I add 4 here, what do I do to the other side? Add 4. Okay, good. Now, same thing here. When I have a positive 4 divided by 2, it's a positive 2. But a positive 2 squared is what? 4. So you square 4. Now, we're going to go to the next step where, first of all, we're going to go ahead and add everything on the right together, and that gives me a positive 2. But now, I'm going to use completing the square for each group of these, okay? So what perfect square trinomial will give me, what binomial will get me this one? Well, remember, all you have to do is divide that in half to figure it out, and it's going to be a negative. So I just go x minus 2 squared plus, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I want to square a binomial to get this. Well, what's a positive 4 divided by 2? Well, 2. So that's going to be y plus 2 squared. Now, look at my equation. Isn't that an equation of a circle, right? What's your center? Your center is going to be 2, negative 2, right? And your radius is just the square root of 2, because now that's using the equation of the circle we had the other day. This is hard, but you guys can do it. I'm going to give us a quick break here, and I'm going to do one more example.